Hey everyone, hope everybody's doing well. Just a little brief overview mini lecture for this week's topic, which includes existentialism. This is one that my students tend to struggle with, so I encourage everyone to keep an open mind. Also, if you're not familiar with the poem Invictus, which I have on the screen now, I encourage you to read it because it kind of really speaks to this approach. Also, there's a quote shared here by Viktor Frankl, who is credited with being one of the founding fathers of the approach. Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. I say this with most of the approaches, but this one in particular, to really understand this approach, you have to understand the man behind the approach and everything that he went through, particularly when he was imprisoned at a Nazi prison camp, a concentration camp. He actually was able to put this theory to test. Also, just as an overview, I always talk about the essential questions for each theory. You should be able to answer the essential questions: the who, the what, the when, the why, the hows, and of course the roles of the therapist, and also the strengths and limitations or criticisms of each approach. If you can answer those fairly quickly, then you'll have a good understanding of the approaches. All right, so moving along. Okay, so I want to just, before we really begin, I want to share a little story from Dr. Frankl's Will to Meaning. He tells the story about how he was counseling a colleague, a doctor, and who had recently lost his wife, and he was just overcome by grief, and throughout, he was just going on and on about, being so grief-stricken and missing her and how he didn't know what he was going to do and so forth. And Dr. Frankl poses this question to him. He says, okay, so tell me this, what do you think it would have been like for your wife had you been the one to pass away first? And to that, the doctor replied, oh, how great her suffering would have been. Oh, I don't know what she would have done. I don't know how she could have survived and taken care of running of things that, the business of managing our home and so forth. And Dr. Frankl responded with, so you see, by her passing away first, she's been spared. She has been spared missing you and not knowing how to survive. But to that, it is your responsibility or your burden, if you will, to bear that, because you have spared her. So that kind of touches on a little bit about existentialism and just kind of gives you a flavor of what it's like, and especially from the man himself. So if you can answer these questions, these key essential questions, you'll be doing well. Here, just want you to think about the goals of the existential approach. So existential therapy assumes that we are free and we're responsible for our actions. And the goal is to assist clients in their exploration of the existential givens of life, and how sometimes these are ignored or they're denied. And we have to address these givens because they can lead to this deeper and more reflective existence. So basically what we're saying, in other words, is that everyone has or will experience death at some point. We enter the world alone, and we're going to die and leave essentially alone. That sounds pretty morbid and depressing, but just bear with us. So another goal is that for people that will learn that they are finite, that they have a potential to act or not to act. You have like a born date and a died on date, and in between is the dash. So basically, what are you going to do with the dash? You have the potential to act or not act. You're subject to guilt. You're subject to loneliness and isolation. and that meaning isn't automatic. You have to look for it. You have to seek it. It's not just going to pop up and say, this is your meaning. You have to realize the importance of meaning and responsibility and awareness. Also, freedom and potential. Those are key elements of this approach: responsibility, awareness, freedom, and potential. So how do we do this? Since we have to seek meaning, where do we find it? Where, how do we do this? So existentialists place an emphasis on individuals finding meaning in what they do, and also that we discover meaning in 3 ways. So this is how we do it. You can find meaning by creating work or doing a deed. You can find meaning by experiencing something or encountering someone. And for example, the example I was giving about the doctor losing his wife, that would be an experiencing something or encountering someone, finding meaning in that. And also by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. And just like Viktor Frankl in his imprisonment in the Nazi camp, they could take so much from him. They could take everything from him. They could take his physical freedom where he wasn't permitted to go. But remember, in this camp, he lost everything. He lost every person in his family. He lost his wife. He lost his mother, his father, I think his sister. And the only reason why he survived is because he was a doctor. So he was spared. But he didn't, he still suffered immensely. He didn't even realize that his family had been killed until finding parts of their clothing at a work site that he was working on later on. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine? And he was starved, but he chose his attitude about his suffering because he said, that is the one thing they cannot take from me. So the why. Basically, what is the philosophy and what are the basic assumptions of the existential approach? Why do they believe what they believe? So existentialists believe that we are all capable of self-awareness. There's this distinct capacity that allows us to reflect and also to decide. People form their lives, and this is true, I believe at least. We form our lives by the choices that they make, and we are responsible for any choice that we make, whether it's healthy or not. And I'll take it a step further. We are responsible for our action and our inaction. So we are equally responsible for what we do and also what we don't do when something is needed to be done. So existentialism is grounded on the assumption that we are free and we therefore are responsible for our choices. We're responsible for our actions. It's also this notion that the significance of our existence is really never fixed once and for all. Basically, just who you are today is not the same person that you may have been just a year ago or 5 years ago. And you're constantly evolving and developing. The person that you are today is not the person that you're going to be in 5 years. We grow, we learn, we change over time. So we're never all fixed at one time. Like I said, we're continually emerging, evolving, and becoming. And we're doing all these things because it's in response to the tensions and contradictions and conflict of our lives, our experiences. So the basic dimensions of human conditions include self-awareness, freedom and responsibility, the creation of an identity and establishing meaningful relationships, the search for meaning, purpose, values, and goals, and anxiety is a condition of living, and awareness of death and non-being. So the when is the existential approach used, and basically what populations or conditions does this work best with? So when a therapist or a counselor is actively encouraging clients to make choices and develop their lives as a way to maximize their existence, that would be a good time to kind of reel in some of the aspects of the existential approach. It can be really used with a wide range of persons that are struggling with addictions or substance abuse. It can help clients to become self-aware and make healthier decisions, but it's not. I don't want it just you to think it's just for people with addictions and working through recovery. It could be used for a wide array of things, not just that. It could also be used for people with depression and anxiety and so forth. So the how, existential techniques, what techniques are used? The interesting thing about this particular approach is students, like I said, usually struggle with it because it is very abstract. And because it is abstract, there's really no real set of techniques that are used. If I had to say that there was a technique, it would be more of a skill that the practitioner would need to have, and that would be of really being in tune with their client and being able to really read their verbal and nonverbal cues, really have strong attending skills. To be able to understand where they're coming from and understand where they're going, and what their whole needs are. There's more of it's usually used, this approach is usually, it's not designed to be a standalone approach. It's usually used in conjunction with other approaches. It's usually used in conjunction with more of the active and directive approaches. For example, like cognitive behavioral therapy, which we will be covering later on. There is an emphasis on the client's immediate or ongoing experiences as well. Alright, so moving right along. We have what is the role of the existential therapist. There's really no uniform way of helping others because existentialists believe that everyone is unique. They really appreciate everyone's unique talents and abilities and individuality. There is, however, a great concern with understanding the subjective world of their clients. They have to, like I said, be very in tune with their clients. And the whole idea is for existential therapists to help the client come to a new understanding and options. And they're concerned about clients avoiding responsibility. So strengths versus limitations. The strengths are that the approach lessens the chances of dehumanizing therapy because they do value the uniqueness and individuality of everyone. And it has something to offer counselors regardless of their theoretical orientation. There's this stress on personal. I think most of the time, if you really break it apart, people can kind of buy into parts of what this approach is about, like personal freedom, responsibility, being the author of your own life, and the key concepts of the approach like anxiety, guilt, meaning, death, and the creative aspects of being alone. They can usually be integrated into most other approaches. Like I said, remember, it's not a standalone approach. Some of the limitations is that it is very abstract and it's difficult to grasp. There's really not a lot of techniques per se. It hasn't been subjected to scientific research as a way of proving or validating that its efficacy. It has limited applicability to lower functioning clients because it is abstract. Also, it doesn't really work with clients that are in extreme crisis. I mean, if you're really trying to worry about having a roof over your head and food and your belly in true crisis, this won't be it for you. Also, like I said, it hasn't produced a fully developed model of counseling. It's best when paired with another approach. And so I think it's just important just to keep an open mind about this approach, and make sure that you do understand these essential questions: the who, the what, the when, the wheres, and the whys. This is also often confused as being a spiritual or a religious-based approach. And it is and it isn't. It's whatever you want it to be. If you do adhere to, have a strong faith in something, then perhaps you can attribute it to that. But it doesn't have to be that way. So that's always been a debatable thing in our classrooms. discussions. Just wanted to share. If you have any questions, let me know.